Welcome to English 3E, lesson 28, and this is Jillian Percy. Here are all the ways to contact us. I'm in the studio right now. You can call 1-800-465-7144. You can also call the WASA office, 1-800-667-3703. I'll be back there after we finish this. 1-800-463-7852. At that number, you can fax your work to me. You can email me a question at jillian.percy@nnecschools.org. You can send a message to me at any time regarding your work, and I'll reply as soon as possible. We store the recordings on YouTube. You can rewatch a recording at capital G, capital P, ERCY, space, capital W, AHSA. Please submit your assignments at student.work@nnec.on.ca. Remember to put your full name, lesson number, assignment number, or name or number, because some of them have names, some of them have assignments. Also, I'm going to point out class number as well. I've got 4 different classes, so I need to know for sure which class it is. I get a lot of assignments. If I'm not sure of where an assignment goes, I don't mark it right away. I wait until I have time to talk to the student, because each assignment has a different marking scheme, as do the different courses. So please, if you put all that information on, it means things go quicker. Okay, we are continuing our work in English 3E, Attaining the Quest. Looks like this. We're getting very close to wrapping up. I think by tomorrow we are wrapped up for this unit, and then we'll start Unit 5. Okay, wanted to cover commas. I know I've mentioned it a few times, but it's a continuing problem that I see coming up in marking, so I thought I would discuss it. Here are some common places that we use a comma in a sentence, okay? After a beginning adverb phrase, when you're describing when, how, or where something happened. Yesterday, I visited grandma. We put a comma after the yesterday. Carefully, comma, the munitions expert defused the bomb. Now, one of the things with those is it could easily go at the end. So if I had done this instead, which I talk about, oh, I don't know why my computer keeps doing this. I'm so sorry, friends. I'm going to have to talk to the tech guys and see why it keeps knocking me out. I've tried staying signed in, and I've tried signing out to see which one works better, but no matter what, it seems to keep doing this to me. I'm so sorry. Okay, so here I could say I visited grandma yesterday. I don't need a comma there, but you can see the yesterday is describing when I visited. Sometimes we put it at front as kind of a sequencing thing when we're talking through a series of events that happen at different times. The other time, like here, where we put carefully in front, it could go like carefully diffused carefully. When we're putting it up front, it's kind of emphasizing before we even start how the guy is going to be acting. And often we use a comma there. I would use a comma there. That's correct. After a beginning subordinate phrase, which will start with a subordinate conjunction, things like if, until, since. We did a whole list of those the other day. If I had known you were coming home, comma, then I would have baked a cake. We also use a comma after a beginning prepositional phrase. These are often used to indicate time or the location of event being discussed. These are often a type of adverb phrase. Sometimes it's really obvious, like this. Sometimes it's kind of a little bit longer and not quite as obvious. Over at the hospital, comma, the powwow ceremony is being held. In the afternoon, comma, I'll be heading to Dryden to do some shopping. So for both of those, it's like a little piece of introductory material before you get to the main point of the sentence. And again, if you put it at the end, you wouldn't necessarily need the comma. Or you would not need the comma, I guess. So when these phrases don't need a comma, this is my example. If I put it at the end, most of the time, I think all of the time, really. Most of the time is me trying to be careful. Um, you don't need the comma. I visited Auntie yesterday. No commas needed. I walked home carefully. No comma. For subordinate clauses, I went home right away after school since I had to babysit my little brother. I will celebrate my graduation when the day comes along. Prepositional phrases. I walked over the bridge. The army hid among the trees. The whole reason we put a comma when we're putting these phrases in front is because it doesn't quite make sense. Over the bridge, well, there's no subject, there's no verb. We're kind of showing the reader, hey, I know this is not quite a proper sentence. This is an introductory phrase. And then I walked. Now, that obviously sounds very odd. We wouldn't usually say it that way, but that is why you had that little introductory phrase and then a comma. Whereas here, you already know the subject, you already know the verb. It's just part of the sentence, okay? One more place that does not need a comma. This is the most common grammatical error I see. So be cautious with commas in this instance. Between two sentences. I couldn't wait to see my grandma, comma, she was my favorite person, and I forgot the period. Problem of working too fast. I think this comma thing is happening maybe because we talk that way a lot when we're doing Facebook messages, just to kind of show we're kind of onto a new idea. But it just isn't correct for academic writing. Now, there are at least 4 different ways that you could fix this problem. So I'm going to talk to you about different ways you can punctuate or write this so that it is correct. First of all, you can just split up the 2 sentences by using a period. I couldn't wait to see my grandma, period. She was my favorite person, period. Or if you wanted to show that those 2 sentences are connected, I couldn't wait to see my grandma. Oh, I hit the wrong button there. Sorry. Semicolon. She is my favorite person. We don't use semicolons very often, I think, in regular writing, and yet they're totally legitimate, and it's a way to turn the same sentence into a proper grammatical sentence just by changing the punctuation. Same thing here. Punctuation's changed. Or you could create a compound sentence by using a coordinating conjunction to combine them. In that case, you'll need the comma, but you also need the coordinating conjunction. I couldn't wait to see my grandma, comma, for she is my favorite person. I'm explaining why I can't wait to see her. Or you could create a complex sentence by using a subordinating conjunction. I couldn't wait to see my grandma because she is my favorite person. Again, there's that comma there. Any of these are correct ways to fix this particular problem. Okay. Going on to today's assignments, we have the reading on an incident report and questions 12 and 13. And then there is kind of a little ad article called Safety at Work. And we have question number 14. Okay, so this is the incident report. Up top it says, conflicts and disagreements happen all the time in the workplace. When you've been involved in one of these, you may need to write an incident report to explain your side of the story to a manager or supervisor. What important information should an incident report contain? With a partner, make a list. You don't have to do that. We're just kind of reading it. Memo from Mia Wong, cashier, to Carol Bati, manager. Date, Friday, February 1st, 2002. Today, Friday, February 1st, an incident occurred with a customer that I want to share with you. At about 2:00 p.m., when the store was very busy, I waited on a customer, Mrs. Ritva, who, as you know, is a regular customer here. I was processing her purchase of a lady's 2-piece suit when the American Express card she was using for the $295 purchase was refused. I quietly explained this to her, and she began to yell at me and insist that I had made a mistake. I again processed the card, and again it was refused. She demanded that I call American Express as this was an error. She needed the suit for an engagement that evening and said that since she shopped here often, I should call American Express and straighten this out. Since I had a long lineup, I asked her to please step aside and I would assist her once I had completed the sales of the customers who had been waiting. She began yelling at me, calling me rude and lazy, and demanded that I give her the suit and process the card anyway. I told her that she was welcome to use the phone to make that call, but she demanded to see you. I explained that you would not be in today, and she left the store yelling that she would see that I got fired. Both Maria Casava and Julie Card witnessed the incident and will support my statement that I was not rude and followed our store's policies. I feel very badly about this incident, as Mrs. Ritva has always been a good customer here. However, she embarrassed me, and I was upset for the rest of the day. Since I am not in tomorrow, please call me at home if you need any further explanation about this incident. So this goes with question number 12. In the workplace text, incident report, what is the incident that results in the writing of the report, 2 or 3 sentences for 2 marks? Remember to summarize the most important points from the report. Your sentences do not have to be simple. You can combine sentences using conjunctions to make longer, more detailed sentences. All right, question number 13 is also on the same story. Do you feel that Mia has done the appropriate thing in this situation? Why or why not? Is there something that you might do differently if you were put in her place? 2 or 3 sentences for 2 marks. Think about, do you feel like Mia said the right words? Do you think she did the correct actions? Is there anything she could have done or said that might have changed the results? Please note, I'm not looking for a correct answer. This is one of those situations that's just a kind of a judgment call, and different people might handle it in a different way. I'm looking at how you were able to explain your thinking, okay? So I'm looking at your writing, not at what side you choose or anything like that. All right, so then we have this safety at work. This is an ad on page 179. It's part of a series created by WSIB. What does WSIB stand for? Scan the ad to find out, and then read the ad in detail. Well, WSIB stands for Workplace Safety and Insurance Board. They help to monitor safety standards and pay money to those injured at the workplace, assuming it was no fault of their own. So we're going to take a look at the next page to see a glimpse of their website. Hang on, where am I at? So here's what it looks like. They don't even spell it out here. It says about us, we're here to help. We provide wage loss benefits, medical coverage, and support to help people get back to work after a work-related injury or illness. We are funded by premiums paid by Ontario businesses. We provide no-fault collective liability insurance and access to industry-specific health and safety information. We are one of the largest insurance organizations in North America, covering over 5 million people in more than 300,000 workplaces across Ontario. Our vision is to make Ontario one of the healthiest and safest places to work. A big part of that effort is the support we provide to people who have suffered a work-related injury or illness. We help them as they recover and safely return to work. So if you've ever gone to the hospital with some sort of injury, sometimes they'll ask you, hey, did this happen at work? And the reason is because they have to file things differently. And because immediately WSIB, or their sister organization, I believe. Anyways, it gets looked into as to what happened. Was it legitimate? That kind of things. Some different types of businesses have different types of hazards. Like anyone can trip over a loose piece of rug, but like there's certain kinds of accidents like that would happen in mining that wouldn't happen if you were, say, a teacher. Or there's safety problems that might happen in a hospital where you're handling, biological hazards that aren't going to happen in a retail environment. So these guys are kind of the specialists in this, and this is what this ad is about. All right, so here's a picture of the main guy. His name is Stephen Mace. 2 years ago, at age 19, Stephen Mace was on his first night shift. He shut down a sharp-bladed shredding machine before checking on a jam-up. Somehow, the machine restarted, grabbed his sleeve, and began pulling him into the shredder when a coworker heard his screams. Steve came home, minus an arm. In Ontario, machine hazards and falls are two of the leading causes of workplace injuries. 1 in 5 workplace injury involves machines. 3 work-related amputations happen every day in our province. 80 people are injured daily by falling at work. It's up to everyone to ensure equipment is well maintained and used properly, and that workers are well trained before they're on the job. Although things are getting better, you can't be too safe, Steve tells other young workers. If it doesn't feel safe, don't do it. Steve makes a difference in safety posters, TV interviews, and by volunteering with St. John Ambulance. The Workplace Safety and Insurance Board is proud to work with people like Steve Mace in making every Ontario workplace safe. Call us to find out how you can make a difference. And then the information on how to call. So this guy, first day on his job, machine gets jammed. He turns it off. Somehow it gets restarted, grabs his sleeve and begins pulling his hand into the shredder, which sounds absolutely horrifying. Somebody heard him screaming, came and was able to get him out of the machine. So so machine hazards are one of the 2 leading causes of workplace injuries. So that's what we're going to be talking about next. Why do we even need these kind of laws about workplace safety? Can't we just trust that the owners of mines and other workplaces like this will just take care of their employees? The problem is that historically, the people who own different businesses, especially big ones, have really not taken care of their employees. It often costs more money to do things in a safe way. More people, physical safeguards, special equipment, etc. One reason why businesses from North America often have factories overseas is because the health and safety laws in some countries are not as strong, like in India, for example. So they can do things much cheaper there. However, here is a video from the States where safety laws are not as strong, and the safety standards, even 40 years ago, were not as strong as some places in Europe. So I want to kind of show you this because depending on your age, you might know a lot about this, or you might not know a whole lot.
All right, agree with client and start time tracking. Great. So for Q4, I was thinking.
What are you doing?
Oh, we needed a whiteboard wall. We got this really important thing.
Let's face it, if it wasn't for the Industrial Revolution, you wouldn't be able to watch this video. Inventions like the spinning jenny and the power loom revolutionized textile production at the end of the 18th century. Technology advancement transited across all industries, replacing workers who were manufacturing products by hand. The age of machines had begun. But like any other important chapter of human history, the Industrial Revolution has a lot of blood on its hands. It wasn't just the death of the cottage industry and artisans. What followed was the loss of morality, destruction in the name of creation, and a lot of messed up practices that would make you wonder, was the Industrial Revolution worth the bloodshed to make that iPhone 11 in your hand possible? Today, workplace safety is a major concern for almost every single industry. Every employee, no matter how risky the job, has the right to be safe at the workplace. But that wasn't always the case. Contrastingly, during the Industrial Revolution, a job in the factory meant wagering your life every single shift. People got killed or injured on a regular basis, and nobody gave a hoot about them. One might have a better chance at winning the pot at the London Derby than surviving a week in factories in London. Employers only cared enough to make sure the mess was cleaned as soon as possible and the factory carried on production at all cost. The victims were delivered to their family without any compassion or compensation. Deceased employees would be replaced the very moment or perhaps the next day, as there was no lack of hungry, desperate souls looking for jobs at that time. In fact, workers' death was more common than you could imagine. During the construction of the Panama Canal, 2 of every 5 workers died. The construction of the Transcontinental Railroad claimed 2 of every 25 workers' lives, while the Erie Canal's death claim stood at 1 out of 50. Working in factories was literally like playing hot potato with a bomb. All factories were equipped with boilers to generate steam that had no safety features. There wasn't even an off button to these giant pressure cookers, so they would explode all the time, sometimes taking the whole factory with them. By one estimate, during the late 19th century, there was an average of 1 boiler explosion every 4 days, and about 50,000 people a year died as a result. The factories in early industrial England were dependent on the lack of accountability so they could keep their profits high. Safety was way too expensive back then, and human resources were abundant, easily replaceable, and most important, dirt cheap. To be honest, a volatile and risky work environment doesn't seem so dangerous when one was living in a city with a couple of 100,000 people and their cholera-infested chamber pots. And for the industrialists, they had no care in the world for human life. As long as the public didn't start asking questions, they could just keep replacing the dead employees with live ones. They wouldn't even flinch before sending laborers down in coal mines with burning candles. Mining tunnels were cramped, prone to collapse, hot and dark. Electricity and battery-run equipment was still a distant dream, and the only way to navigate through these dangerous tunnels was to hold a burning torch or candle in hand. These explicitly dangerous depths were often filled with highly flammable natural gases. Unfortunately, a source of light like a torch or candle was not exactly the best option when trapped gases were extremely combustible and ready to explode if an open-source flame was provided. On May 25, 1812, 121 miners were inside the Felon Colliery mine on the northeast coast of England when there was an explosion. 92 people died, including several boys as young as 8 and 9 years old. Many of the bodies were not recovered for more than a month because it was still too dangerous to go into the mine to look for them. The disaster inspired someone to think about inventing a non-flammable miner's lamp. What makes the whole thing more emotional is that the government and the media rarely cared about the plight of laborers in these factories. This apathy allowed industrialists to run their factories without ensuring any kind of safety protocol or humane environment for their workers. It also empowered industrialists to shift the blame of the high mortality rate in their workplace onto their workers. For instance, the Boston Herald blamed a screw factory worker named Michael Markham's overassurance of his capabilities when he was killed in a workplace accident while operating machinery. It was pretty common for the newspapers to blame the workers for carelessness and not taking their own safety seriously when in fact there was no safety provided.
Ontario is investing in student success. We're hiring
A bank that's always making. For us, not them. Every dollar, every day. Less take, more make.
Sorry, that wasn't happening when I was doing it on my computer. Hang on.
The term American Dream may have been coined by James Truslow Adams in his 1931 book Epic of America, but the concept was prevalent back at the beginning of the 19th century as well. As the Industrial Revolution killed most of the cottage industries one by one, millions of rural people uprooted their entire families in hopes of seeking a better livelihood. They migrated to bigger cities so they could surrender their lives in servitude to the same machines that had replaced them. As the media industry had not entirely caught up with others' pace in the 19th century, the news was still carried by people in paper instead of radios, telegrams, or the internet. So the news wasn't exactly fresh when a man in a rural area heard of an employment opportunity in the city. By the time he'd reached the metropolitan area with his entire family, the opportunity would already be over. This would leave many new uprooted families lost in the city. Soon, cities were overcrowded with such desperate workers ready to work at any rate possible. Even though there were lots of new factories popping up everywhere, there were still not enough jobs to accommodate all unemployed migrants. People were eager to work, but the disparity between demand and supply of jobs created the opportunity for industrialists to hire labor below minimum wage. Laborers were treated as commodities, and once skilled craftsmen were now part of the mindless hives where fast, cheap, identical production superseded talented, unique, and expensive work. These factories were forced to work long, low-wage, terrible hours in dark and unsafe factories. To be honest, much has not changed over the years. Even though laborers have rights and safety today in the USA, they are losing the competition to South and Southeast Asian workers. They are still willing to work for dirt-cheap wages due to lack of better alternatives. Power loom revolutionized textile production.
Go back to stuff changes there. All right, so that's one reason why they have safety labor laws, because generally, the people who are making money at the top have not traditionally cared a whole lot what happened as long as they were able to continue making money. Not accusing anyone in particular, just talking about that in general, right? So question number 14 asks you to comment on the issue of safety in the workplace. If you are currently working at a job, full-time, part-time, or casual, is safety an issue at your job? If not, do you feel it should be given some priority in your workplace for everyone involved? Every employee has a right to a safe and healthy work environment. Of course, we have responsibilities in the workplace as well as to be working safe. So, are there some issues that need to be addressed? Do you know what safety issues might apply to your workplace? If you think something's unsafe, do you feel comfortable telling your boss or supervisor about it? Are there situations, equipment, cleaning fluids, or materials that you feel are unsafe? If you report an unsafe situation, does anybody do anything about it? Right? Sometimes they don't mind us reporting, but they're not necessarily going to do anything. I jumped around a little bit. There is a site here where you can find. So if you go here, it talks about your health and safety rights and responsibilities. Okay, can you hear me now? All right, if you go over here for your health and safety rights and responsibilities, it talks about some of the rights that you have under the law, okay? The Workplace Safety and Insurance Act requires that there be specific first aid equipment and training for the workers. There's in case of injury at the work poster, there's procedures to follow in case of an injury. Different workplaces may have different types of safety regulations. The entire Occupational Health and Safety Act is online. If you click on this, it will bring it up. Oh, hang on. Where's the whole thing? Oh, hang on. I'm going to go back to my. Here we go. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, here we go. So it lists all the different types of laws and regulations that go into safety. And you can see it's pretty widespread. Things from naloxone kits, noise, needle safety, confined spaces, farming, firefighters, x-ray safety, window cleaning, teachers. And if you had like a specific concern about a workplace issue, like, let's say, I'm pretty sure there was construction workers somewhere. Okay, construction projects. So I could go there. Let's say I was a construction worker and I wanted to know what something was safe or not safe, or whether it was considered illegal. I could go there. I can't pull it up right now. I could go there. I could pull it up. It would have a whole list of what's safe, what's not safe. So if you're ever not sure if something is considered safe or considered illegal in your workplace, you can go there and check and get some information about whether a situation is considered legal or not. So that's an important issue. Oh, okay, so we're going to wrap that up. So these are just two kind of short little questions on the concept of safety. And I think we're getting close to, yep. All right, culminating activity, a workplace report. This whole activity is worth 55 marks. As you most likely have discovered by now, the workplace is not always a pleasant and comfortable place to be. On occasion, and sometimes fairly often, depending on your job, there is disagreement and conflict between or among coworkers or between a coworker and a customer, supervisor, or manager. A variety of issues can and do lead to such disagreement and conflict. There are a range of emotions such as disappointment, anger, sadness, fear, jealousy, and embarrassment that are experienced by people involved. You are going to think about a situation that might have been involved by yourself at work in the past, or perhaps something more recent, or perhaps it's happening right now, and express your feelings about it or about these occurrences. If you have not experienced any sort of disagreement or conflict, or perhaps you don't have any work experience to begin with, you can think about a situation that you've experienced other than in a workplace. You also could have something that you just don't want to discuss. It's totally fine to have your own privacy. You are fine to make something up. Again, I'm not coming around to check on the truth of something. I'm just looking at your writing, in this case, a specific kind of work writing that people do all the time, right? Because one of the things we're practicing here is making sure that we have the writing skills to be able to do the writing and reading needed in a workplace, because most require some sort of reading and writing, even just as simple as creating an incident report. The rough copy is handwritten. It is worth 10 marks. The good copy can be handwritten or it can be typed. It's worth 15 marks. You want to be writing approximately 3/4 to 1 page. Describe the situation or situations that you've experienced. Please do not mention any people's names in your writing. I may know people in your community. I don't want to hear information that I should not be privy to. Just make up names. So if something happened with a guy named Peter, give him the name Paul or something, okay? In the incident, you do need to mention whether this person was a coworker, a supervisor, a manager, maybe they were a customer or a client. Was there or has there been any need to create an incident report? The point here of the assignment is to reveal an issue or issues that can occur in any workplace and that need to be dealt with. Now, we are going to use this incident to do part B of this assignment, where we write up an incident report. So really, for the purposes of this, you're probably going to want to have something that you could write an incident report about. Otherwise, it'll be pretty hard to do assignment B, okay? So if you've never been in any situation that required that kind of incident report, it's totally fine to make something up, okay? That's just fine. Let me see here. Oh, okay, so just in case you weren't kind of sure of what are some things that you could discuss or make up, this is about workplace harassment. I was talking about fairly recent, 2016. Harassment in the workplace can come in a variety of forms, with the potential for far-reaching effects on the health and well-being of workers, as well as on their job tenure, job stability, and job satisfaction. Using data from 2016 General Social Survey on Canadians at Work and Home, this study focuses on workplace harassment experienced by respondents at some point in the past year. The target population includes those who were aged 15 to 64 and worked for pay in the past year. So it's a pretty broad range, not just adults. It includes older teens there. Overall, 19% of women and 13% of men reported that they had experienced harassment in their workplace in the past year. Workplace harassment includes verbal abuse, humiliating behaviors, threat to persons, physical violence, and unwanted sexual attention or sexual harassment. The most common type of workplace harassment was verbal abuse. 13% of women and 10% of men reported having experienced it in the past year. The next most common type was humiliating behavior. 6% of women and 5% of men reported having experienced it, while about 3% of both men and women said that they had experienced threats. Women were more likely to report sexual harassment in their workplace than men. So women had about 4%, men had less than 1%. Among women who reported sexual harassment, more than half were targeted by clients or customers. So you can see here, the issue isn't necessarily their bosses, but the clients and customers that felt free to act inappropriately with somebody in a business. Workers in health occupations are the most likely to report having been harassed on the job in the past year. The differences between those in health and those in other occupations are more pronounced for women than men. So in other words, A, workers in health occupations got harassed more. B, women who were in health were significantly more harassed than men were as compared to other occupations. About 47% of men and 34% of women who had been harassed by a supervisor or manager had a weak sense of belonging to their current organization, compared with 16% of both women and men who said they had not been harassed at work in the past year. I think they're just pointing out here that if you've been harassed at a workplace, you don't necessarily feel like you belong there. I suppose in part because you just don't feel safe there. So this is just kind of giving you a list of some of the types of events that could happen that could create an incident. Okay, you will want to look ahead to part B to be sure that the work we're doing here in part A sets you up for success with the assignment in the next section. So here's a quick look at part B. Part B says, based upon the workplace text incident report found on pages 176 to 177 in the textbook, The Road Ahead, you're going to develop a similar report in that kind of memo format that they used as a result of your experience described in part A, or one that you will just make up. This is your decision to make. Your report will be about the same length as that of the incident report in your textbook. So that's what we're aiming towards. You need to be mindful of that as we're doing part A. Okay, so writing process in this assignment. In this assignment, you're basically using a narrative type format, okay? It can be a true narrative or a fictional one you make up, that's fine. So just like always, we use the writing process. Before you start, take a few minutes and brainstorm. Part 1, is there an actual real life incident that you want to discuss? What kind of fictional incident could have occurred if you don't want to discuss the real life incident, or if you haven't experienced a real life incident? Some things could be working in unsafe conditions, a lack of appropriate training, sexual harassment, verbal abuse, physical abuse, unfair treatment, like in pay or hours or shifts, discrimination due to race, gender, religion, culture, anything else that could occur. So anything like this, or things that I haven't mentioned, this is just some of the things I was brainstorming, could be an incident. And again, part B, who was involved in this incident? Was it a customer or client who came into the business? Was it a coworker? Was it a supervisor or a boss? Part 3, what did the other person say or do? What did you say or do? How did you attempt to solve the problem yourself? And was there anyone who was supposed to help you who didn't? Just kind of thinking as we were talking about the laws, were there any laws that were supposed to be followed that weren't? Right. So for example, let's say a customer was calling you names, maybe they even give you a push. Legally, you have the right to call the police, but some business owners might not want to because they don't want to lose the customer. So that would be an example of a law that wasn't followed. Or maybe there was a safety law that was supposed to be followed. Like there's some machines where if you have the safety devices in place, the machine actually works a little bit slower. You can disable those safety guidelines and the machine will work faster, but obviously it's not as safe. So that would be an example of there was a safety device there, but the workplace is not using the safety guidelines that are there. So that would be something to think about as you're brainstorming your incident. Okay, so after we brainstorm, then we always do the rough draft. Remember, this is going to be almost a page long, so it might have multiple paragraphs. Generally, we start a new paragraph when we start a new topic or a new important point. So think about, as you're starting your rough draft, what are the beginnings of the incident? When did things first start to go wrong? How did you notice? What did you do? And what did the other person do? Then think about the middle of the incident. It might involve multiple steps or attempts to fix the problem. It might involve dialogue between you and the other person. Then think about the end of the incident. What actually happened? What did you or the other person wish had happened instead? And what, if anything, could have been done differently to create a different ending? So I'm going to give you an example. So in the article here about Stephen Mace, they don't really spend a lot of time talking about the incident. They actually kind of just jump to the end result and then talk about sort of more generic statistics about Ontario. Okay. So I'm kind of writing this as if I were Steve and kind of walking through the incident in the same manner that I would expect you to. This might not be long enough. I'm kind of limited a little bit by how much space I have. So again, I'm putting them Steve. When I began my first shift, I was not given any safety instructions on working with the machines. Neither was I given a mentor to walk me through the safe usage of the machines. There was a jam up with a shredding machine. I shut the machine down and reached in to clear the jam. Somehow the machine started up again. I don't know if there was another safety measure I should have taken. The machine pulled my shirt sleeve and then my arm into the shredder blade. I could not get my arm free or get the machine to stop. I began screaming, and Jeff heard me and was able to unplug the machine quickly to stop it from continuing to shred my arm. He quickly called 911. While we waited for the ambulance, he began first aid. We called the night supervisor, who was not present in this area during the incident. I feel that many things could have been done to prevent this accident, such as an emergency override switch, proper safety training before I began my first shift, a coworker to mentor me during my first several days of work, and proper support from the supervisor. Okay. So sometimes when we're doing a rough draft, we feel like, oh, I've said all I have to say, but we haven't quite reached the length. So if I had that problem, what I would do first of all, before I go on to the next thing, is you want to make sure your rough draft is long enough. If there's not enough details, it's pretty hard to fix it and make your good copy as long as it needs to be. So just take a quick look at that there and think about, are there any places where we could add some more details? So right here comes up. I haven't really talked about this. How did he start using it? How did he know there was a jam up? If he shut the machine down, what button did he hit? How did it start up again? I don't quite understand. That's one spot. He began first aid. That's another spot where in an actual incident report, they would want to know that you followed the first aid procedures. So I might add some more details there. What happened with the night supervisor? Where was he? Was he just in another part of the factory? Was he like outside smoking? Why didn't he give this guy some more information? What did he do once he found out? So those are 3 spots that I see that I could add some more details if I didn't think my rough draft was long enough. Okay, so that'd be my first spot. Make sure your rough draft is long enough. Okay. Next page. So how can I revise this rough draft? And I know this part is kind of tedious and we keep kind of going over it, but basically we're going over it because so it becomes like second nature. It just becomes easy because you've done it so often. Okay. Whenever you're looking at a rough draft, first of all, my sentences in blue are talking about, does it make sense? That is the absolute first thing to check, because if it doesn't make sense, nothing else is going to matter. Okay. Sometimes reading it through can help you make sure it makes sense. It's really easy if you're writing quickly to forget some of our smaller words like a, then, to, if, that kind of thing. And it can make things sound really a little bit odd, and we don't realize it until we read it out loud. So does the order make sense? Right? Did I remember to write things in a chronological order? Did I include a topic sentence? What about a closing sentence? Does the content make sense, and does it need more details? That part we were just talking about was, where could I add more details if I needed to make this longer? I don't think this is long enough right now. I can't really compare it to a regular sheet, but it doesn't look long enough to me. Now, the sentences in red is kind of like the next things I would look at if I was going to revise stuff. The very next thing is going to be, how is the sentence structure and can I improve it? And I believe we talked about commas today. Check. We did. So that would be one of the things I would want to check is sentence structure. Do I have simple sentences? Do I have compound sentences? Do I have complex sentences? Have I put my commas in the right spot? Should I add some transition words? Sometimes transition words like next, then, finally, after that can really help the reader kind of go through it makes the flow of the paragraph go a lot better. How is your word choice? Is there spots where you need to add more interesting words? Now, I know in a real incident report, I would not be going back through and doing synonyms, but it is a writing assignment. So because it's a writing assignment, we are going to take that time, right? It's a little bit artificial, I know. How is my overall punctuation? Look at quotation marks, colons, semicolons, commas, periods, question marks, exclamation marks. I didn't mention commas there only because we already talked about commas a bit. How is my capitalization? Names, months, places, and a sentence start are all spots where you have to capitalize. How is your spelling? The one other thing I was thinking about, and I'm going to just kind of add a little tiny extra line here. Put this in yellow so I don't forget that it's extra, not the main thing, was the idea of verb, or what they call subject verb agreement. We've talked about this before, and it basically means like a single subject needs a single verb. Okay. Same thing if there is a plural subject, plural verb. Okay. Be mindful of that. The other thing to be mindful of is verb tense. Verb tense. In this, I would say it was normally past tense, right? You're talking about something that's already happened. So be sure that you're writing it in past tense. You don't want to be flipping in and out of past, present. It's confusing and it's considered ungrammatical, I guess, for a lack of way to do it. Now, the one way that's different. So right here, he starts to say, I feel, and it's because he's talking about a current thing. So that is appropriate because he's switched from talking about the past and when it did happen to what they now think are some ways they could have solved that and made it go better. Okay, does that make sense? Tomorrow we will take a look at the second part of this, and then I think we will be finished Unit 4. We'll see if we have enough time to go on to the next one. So thank you for joining me today. Sorry about the little spot in the middle where there was an empty spot. I had the wrong button on there. My apologies. And I will talk to you guys tomorrow and we will finish up our unit.